So today we're digging into the second layer of the muscle and strength pyramids. This is going to be all about training volume, intensity, and frequency. And so I've got the laptop here to kind of break things up step by step so that we can go over the volume you should be doing, sets, reps, weight, and all that stuff with a bit of a more of a one-on-one live coaching style discussion as we go down through here. So hopefully you've already seen the first video on adherence in the first section of the muscle and strength pyramids. But if you're already training consistently, meaning that your program is something you can actually stick to, like we talked about in that last video in adherence, then this is where you're going to really start actually optimizing your results. So let's break down what each of these kind of topics mean that I talked about and what it looks like in a real training plan and how to apply it without overthinking the whole thing. So let's start with volume. Volume is basically just your total amount of work that you actually do. It's not actually the volume, like intensity in terms of music or anything like that. It's the total amount of work as in volume by size. So in simple terms, that basically means sets times reps times weight. So for practical programming, the easiest way to just consider volume is hard sets per muscle group per week, okay? So just adding in a few light extra sets could skyrocket your volume on paper, right? Like if I did a bicep curl 500 times with 5-pound weight, that's gonna look like a very large amount of total weight lifted, but it ultimately would be fairly meaningless because that effort level just isn't there. So when I'm saying something like, what's your total volume in our videos or to our clients, things like that, I really just mean how many hard sets are you actually doing per week? Like those sets that you really took very close to failure. So in the pyramid, in the muscle and strength pyramids, Dr. Helms recommends that we follow a general guideline of 10 to 20 hard sets per muscle group per week. So if you're newer to training, then we're going to start you closer to 10 sets. If you've already been lifting for a while and documenting this type of stuff and you have an idea of where you should be, then you're probably going to need to move up towards 15 or even 20 if you're recovering really well. But that number is going to be variable from person to person. So as long as you're actually progressing, you feel recovered enough, maybe every couple of weeks you add in an extra hard set, eventually you're going to find what is non-recoverable. So the key word here are that these are hard sets, okay? The key word is that these are hard sets. They are not your warm-up sets. They're sets that are around that 1 to 3 rep from failure range. So if they're just too easy in general, they do not count at all. Practical takeaway here is that we're going to start with 10 to 12 hard sets per muscle per week, and we're going to split that across at least 2 sessions. So I'm going to log our sets. If our progress stalls and recovery feels really good, I'm going to bump up that volume or those total hard sets by 2 to 4 sets per week to any lagging muscles that you want. So say you do your initial block of training for 6 to 8 weeks, your chest is really recovering really well, you feel like you could add a little bit more, but your legs, you get crushed every time you're doing deadlifts or squatting, and you're just not finding that your recovery is very good, you still really sore. Maybe you just keep those in a holding pattern, but you add a set or two to chest. And that can kind of bring that up, or that allows us to specify our training to focus on a specific problem area that we might want to put more effort into. So just remember that junk volume, or this term that you might hear on social media, is definitely real. And that is just basically doing more work for the sake of more work. And it ends up being low effort or sloppy. And it's just not really very productive. It's just going to add needless fatigue on top of what you're doing. And we don't really want that. We want those sets to be good, hard quality. I'd rather have, 3 or 4 very, very difficult sets of a bench press rather than 7 or 8 of them that were half as good, right? So quality over quantity, but we kind of want to push the envelope on the total quantity side as much as possible. So now that we've covered that a little bit, let's talk about intensity. And there are 2 ways that people define this. The first is load intensity, which is how heavy the weight is. such as a percentage of your 1 rep max. And number 2 is going to be the effort intensity. So how close you feel like you're training to failure, measured in either reps in reserve or your rating of perceived exhaustion or exertion, sorry, rating of perceived exertion. So those are 2 technical different ways to define it, but I like to focus more on the second one, which is actually the training effort itself. So the goal is to make every single set count. So most of those working sets should be somewhere between that 1 to 3 reps shy of failure, right? That's pretty straightforward. That's where we get the muscle fiber recruitment and mechanical tension that we need for growth. If we're going too far away from failure, like 4+ repetitions in reserve, then it's kind of just a warm-up, and it's not really contributing anything when we think about that training effort side of the equation. So if you're too far from failure, it doesn't do anything. But if you go to failure all the time and you're constantly pushing your intensity level, you're not able to perform very well over time as those 6, 8, 12, 32 weeks go on. You aren't actually going to continue to perform well. You're going to burn out or maybe get hurt, and recovery is just not going to be there. So we're going to be very close. Probably about like 1 rep in reserve on most things is going to be a great takeaway, with failure set aside for some of those lifts that might be less fatiguing overall, like a bicep curl or a lateral raise or something. If you're going to focus on strength work, maybe in the 3 to 6 range, we're going to stop a little shy of failure. For hypertrophy or anything that you can recover really well from, go to failure or go 1 rep shy. But the biggest thing here as a practical takeaway is to track your effort honestly. If your last rep just didn't look good and it wasn't actually true failure, don't mark it as failure just because that's what you're supposed to do. Or don't get ahead of yourself either. If your logbook is not something that you're normally tracking to failure and you always want that 1 or 2 RIR, then you should definitely stick to that. And you shouldn't say, oh, well, I felt like I needed, to put a little bit more effort in. And so you justify adding an extra set or 2 to failure just for a pump or something like that. It's throwing your data off. So stick to the plan and track your effort honestly. Hypertrophy can be built across a wide range of reps. So as long as the set is taken near failure, you're going to be totally fine, whether that's in that 5 to 10 rep range or all the way to 5 to 30. Just pick something that you like, that feels good on your joints, and you're going to be fine there. Just make sure that you are taking pretty close to failure. Next, we need to touch on frequency, or how often we're actually training each muscle group. So you spike muscle protein synthesis for about 24 to 72 hours after your training. And you're probably going to be pretty well recovered then. So rather than thinking about things as like a Monday as a chest day only, and then it takes a full 7 days before we get back to training our chest at all again, it's much better to train that next when it's ready to be trained next. So if you're fully recovered by Thursday from your Monday's training session, you should probably train your chest again on Thursday. So for most people, this ends up meaning that 2 to 3 times per week is the sweet spot for the frequency there. So it lets you spread out that volume, that intensity across more sessions, which keeps performance higher and recovery a lot smoother. So think about it. If you did your math and you say you want to do those 12 sets of chest in any given week, and those are all very high intensity sets, would you rather do all 12 on Monday or split them up into Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, perchance, with 4 hard sets each? The days with 4 sets each are going to be far better just because they're easier to recover from. So your performance is going to be pretty good. If you did them all in that one day, I can assure you that after you're getting past 7 to 8 sets of good hard work, those last sets are just really giving you diminishing returns because you're so fatigued already by then. Any combination of ways that you want to split things up work, whether that's an upper or a lower split, a full body, push, pull, and legs, all types of splits can work based on your schedule. So just take that total volume number that you need to hit and plug it in. It's tailored specifically to your schedule, and it doesn't have to be matching with any of the other common recommendations out there. can be kind of a Frankenstein split. Just remember that the more often that you actually train a muscle, the more chances you're going to have to apply tension to it, practice the technique, make small progressive improvements, and actually grow that muscle. So if you're just kind of doing chest every Monday forever, then you're missing out probably on a couple of days where you could have been growing it over the weekend, if that makes sense. So let's go ahead and build one plan together and kind of get some practical takeaways here. So let's say you're running a 4-day upper and lower kind of split. That's what you like. That's what you have time for. You want to hit 12 sets of quads, 12 of chest, and 10 of your back per week. Again, arbitrary numbers, but let's just run with it. So you divide that number across your 2 upper days and your 2 lower days. So you're going to need to choose loads that allow you to train close to failure in maybe, let's say, the 6 to 12 rep range. And then track your sets, reps, and effort, and only add volume if you're recovering well and not progressing. So a sample week here is going to be our first workout, upper A. It's a bench press, 4 sets of 6 to 8. Great. Then a bend over row, 4 sets of 8 to 10. Awesome. Overhead pressing, 3 sets of 6 to 10. And then pull-ups, 3 sets, as many reps as possible. Our lower workout could then be back squats for 4 sets of 5 to 8. Romanian deadlifts for 3 sets of 8 to 10. Leg presses, 3 sets of 10 to 15. And calf raises, 3 sets of 15 to 20. So upper B and lower B would repeat, basically being the exact same thing with slightly different variations, maybe, if you want to add some other muscle groups in, but a similar structure and effort. So that would kind of manage our total training amount to be just the right amount of work, done consistently and hard enough to matter. So rather than cramming this all in, we've split it up into a recoverable pattern. So that, say, if we did this first sample workout on a Monday and then the next one on a Tuesday, we'd then maybe take a break on Wednesday, and Thursday comes around, we get back to upper body again, chest is fully recovered, and we can add in those extra sets again. So just remember, volume is the primary driver of muscle growth. We're going to start around 10 sets per week, build up from there, go slow. I promise it doesn't feel like very much at first, but it will as your technique improves and your skill and your quality gets better. You're going to find that you really can dial it in. So just trust me on that. Take it slow and steady at the beginning. Don't make a lot of changes. Your intensity needs to be 1 to 3 reps shy of failure. In my personal experience, I found that 1 to 2 is better. So if you're either hitting failure, you're 1 away, or you're 2 away. That's a better gauge, because most people, when they say, oh, I'm 1 away from failure, it's actually more like 3, and you're just kind of tricking yourself a little bit. So shoot for that. Shoot to 1 to 2 away from failure or complete failure on some of those smaller lifts. Keep it really frequent. Hit those muscles 2 to 3 times a week. And if you've got all 3 of those points aligned, then you're doing enough of the right work at the right effort, spaced out in a way that your body can actually handle so that you can keep progressing. So whether you're following one of the Everybody Coaching training templates from our 5 Foundation of Fitness course, or you're working with one of our coaches or anything like that already, you can kind of get an idea of where we're coming from. Why have we built it this way? What kind of information do you need to adjust and make it more personal? So once you get to the end of your training block, you might feel like, you don't really need a break or anything like that for your legs. They're totally fine. And that might be a good sign that you can ramp up that total amount of sets or that total volume a little bit more. So last few things, really remember that not every session needs to crush you. It's not about doing the most possible, especially when we talk about training to failure. Don't feel like there's this big boogeyman of fatigue catching up to you and you got to be afraid because you're going to be too sore or too in pain. That's not really something to consider. Your sessions should be quite difficult. They should be fairly hard to recover from. The point is that you actually do recover from them, though. So they aren't going to feel easy. I promise you that. So next up after this is going to be talking about progression, because once we have this baseline amount of sets covered, then you're going to need to know how to actually keep driving results without spinning your wheels. So if this helped you at all to understand a little bit more of our training templates, or maybe the intensity that you should be training at, just please let us know. If you still have questions, drop a comment, like the video, and make sure to subscribe so you don't miss anything out as we continue to release our courses.